Burnout for sure decreased productivity. You think that you maxing out, you living with no margin, you living with an empty fuel tank, that's going to produce better results. I promise you, it actually in the long run does not. It actually leads to lower productivity, both for you and for anybody else on your team or in your family that is currently burned out. Hey friends, welcome to this episode of the Primal Question podcast. I'm Mike Foster, and the whole goal of this podcast is to help you better understand yourself and to understand the hidden forces that drive you. And one of the things that we'll just be doing is talking to different people about their primal question, but certainly I want to have some episodes where it's just me, yours truly, talking about a key issue or a key topic that probably is impacting your life in some way. My goal here is really just to improve the client's condition, to improve your day, improve your thinking, improve your awareness about who you are, your gifts, your strengths, your vulnerabilities, your relationships. And that is the whole point of the Primal Question podcast. And so today, I want to cover a topic that I'd be shocked if not everybody can relate to this topic at some level or has experienced this at some time in their life. I know when I'm working with individuals, coaching and counseling people, this topic comes up all the time in all different ways, all different sort of varieties, but it's a pretty significant thing in our lives. And you may be asking yourself, what is that topic? What is that thing? Well, today we're going to be talking about burnout on the Primal Question podcast. And I hope this is helpful to you. We're going to talk about some of the specifics about why we get burned out and hopefully some strategies of how to avoid it and hopefully live a life that is not in a state of burnout, but a life that is flourishing and where you're feeling really good about all things. The tanks are full. You got a smile on your face because you're managing your life well, you're managing your energy well. And so let's dive in. I heard a story about David Foster Wallace, who is an author and essayist. And he was giving a commencement speech at a graduation. And he shared this parable with the audience, and I think it's very applicable to what we're going to be talking about today with burnout. And he shares the story about two fish swimming along when they come across their aquatic path, an elder fish, much wiser, older fish, who greets them enthusiastically by saying, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" Well, the two young fish then swim along for a little bit and for a while, and then they look at each other and they ask each other, "What the heck is water?" Point of the story is sometimes the most obvious, most important realities of our life are completely missed. Sometimes they're just too vast and sometimes they're just too close for us to actually articulate and see what's going on. And I think for a lot of you listening right now or watching on YouTube, you might be saying to yourself, I haven't been paying a close enough attention to the most obvious thing. And perhaps for you right now, the most obvious thing is that you're tired, you're depleted, you've been burned out for a while, you're operating in a way that is undermining your happiness and your joy and your peace. And it's so easy just to go along in our lives and we just forget about the fact that there's water all around us and we don't recognize it. Or maybe another way to say it is that there's burnout all around us and we just don't recognize it. You know, according to Forbes magazine, they say that 40% of modern workers right now consider burnout to be an inevitable part of being successful. It's kind of shocking to me that part of the payment for being successful in your life, or being successful in your workplace, or being a successful parent, or just, being a successful leader, the cost for that is just going to mean that you are going to live in this constant state of fatigue and burnout and tired and listless and just grasping for some type of replenishment. And I'd like to challenge that thought and just say that is just fundamentally not true. That in order to be successful, that we have to burn ourselves out. Another interesting statistic that Deloitte found around this topic of burnout is that they found that 77% of workers, let me say that again, 77% of workers have experienced burnout in their positions. So a lot of burnout going on, a lot of just people feeling drained, feeling tired, just kind of showing up and gutting it out. And I think I think we could say that burnout is for sure common, but let's not normalize it. And I think that's really the first step in terms of this conversation that we're going to have together is, what is your beliefs about burnout? What do you believe about replenishment and self-care? What are your values around these topics? Because I think a lot of us, unfortunately, have just decided like, oh, well, this is what it feels like, and this is what it looks like to live my life. And basically what it looks like is that I have to live depleted, that I don't have any time for myself. There's another interesting statistic that like 50% of vacation days in America go unused. Again, why does that happen? When you're given vacation days, when you're given opportunities to take breaks, time, hey, go to Hawaii, please. The company wants you to do that. And yet we say, no, it's better for me to work. By the way, a lot of us will go on vacations, but we'll take work with us. We'll just take our daily lives with us. And we never really get good replenishment. And so most of this, and a lot of this just flows from what you believe about this topic. What do you believe about working to your max and leaving no margin? And why do you do that? Again, getting to the roots of these issues, because burnout certainly would be what I would consider a branch of the tree, but not necessarily the roots of the tree. And one of the things that's true in terms of the primal question is that the scramble, which is all the ways that we try to force a yes to our primal question, especially when we're getting no's or maybes in our life, that how we force a yes to the question, that whole scramble activities. And that could look like people pleasing, workaholicism, could be hypervigilance. It could just be, going along with the flow, not really having a voice, whatever, over responsibility, whatever it might look like for you in terms of the scramble that comes from your primal question being answered with a no. All I know is that the scramble requires massive amounts of fuel. It is probably the most inefficient way to live life, to live our life in the scramble versus living our lives in the primal truth. It's a fire that has endless fuel demands. And so we've got to be aware of that, about some of our choices and behaviors and our coping mechanisms, and realize how much that is requiring from us to maintain that scramble, to keep that fire going. And it's a lot. And so if we could figure out a way and a strategy for our lives to really take control of our primal question by living in our primal truth, of taking our question and turning it into a statement, then we're not going to be so prone to living most of our week or our day or our life in the scramble, which is absolutely going to lead to burnout, because it keeps you on your toes. It keeps you always doing and working and trying to figure out problems to get that deep need met. Now, a lot of the research in terms of the primal question when it comes to burnout is that a lot of times question 5, 6, and 7, which I would consider to be the performance questions, they're driven by performance. Question 5, am I successful? Question 6, am I good enough? And question 7, do I have purpose? Those three questions, because they're often attached to your performance, those tend to have a lot of people who feel burned out because they're very high achievers. They drive things forward. They're always trying to, make a dent in the universe. They're always trying to take ground, and this constant high level of performance certainly leads to them feeling more burned out in their lives. As you think about perhaps you're a leader, and when I say leader, a leader is somebody who influences, and maybe you're a leader of your family, maybe you're leading your children, maybe you're leading a team, maybe you're leading a company, maybe you're leading a church, whatever you're leading or influencing. One of the things that I talk about with leaders all the time is that energy management is a leader's number one job, both for themselves and for the people that they lead. See, if you're not thinking about energy management, and if that is not a top priority in seeing sort of the ebbs and flows of energy in your organization or in your team or in your family, if you aren't dialed into that, you're not a good leader. Okay. I mean, I'm just going to be honest about that, because we have to have a constant check-in with the fuel tank that we have in our lives and our team members. And sometimes we ask people to do things and ask them to rise to the occasion because we're all excited about some vision or some idea or some new project, and we are not paying attention to actually how much fuel is in the fuel tank of our team members who are going to have to dig in and help us accomplish those outcomes for those projects. If we're not thinking about that, then what are we doing? That's foolishness. And if we're not having a check in with ourselves, like saying, oh my gosh, man, last week, travel, 3 different cities, 2 different time zones. And this week I'm tired, and I'm not checking into the fact that I'm tired or I have low energy right now. And now all of a sudden I've got this, I've scheduled this really important meeting, and I feel like I have to razzle dazzle and be on for, and yet my energy tank is very low or depleted. That's just bad stewardship. That's bad leadership. And so what would it look like for you as you think about the things that you influence and lead? How can you pay attention more closely to the energy of people and the energy of yourself before you make decisions or try to accomplish something that may be important, may be valuable, but the fuel isn't there to get that project across the line? The thing that's very true is that trauma often keeps people in this stress response. A lot of times the things that we are doing today, kind of this, I just call it high alert, always kind of on edge, always everything's engaged. Your mind is engaged, your body's engaged, your emotions are engaged, and you're kind of tense. If you live constantly in that state, oh my gosh, you're going to burn out. That is not sustainable. Okay. And we have to recognize that some of us right now are just, hey friend, you and I have a hidden force driving our lives. It drives our choices, our behaviors, our triggers, our relationships, and even our strengths and our gifts. And most of us have no idea what it is or how to control it. And this hidden force is an unmet emotional need. There are 7 of them, and I call them the 7 primal questions. And when you don't know your primal question, it can wreak havoc on your life because people will do whatever it takes to meet this need. And we can even try to meet that need in some pretty unhealthy ways. But when you identify your core emotional need, a lot of things begin to make sense. And you'll have the clarity to meet emotional needs for yourself and others in much healthier ways that have far-reaching effects on your life and your relationships. Take 5 minutes to discover your primal question today at primalquestion.com. Fundamentally trapped in a stress response. We're trapped in this trauma, past trauma of events, whatever. It could be childhood events. It could be recent events. I was coaching an individual today, and we were talking about how they were just lacking boundaries at their workplace, and working till 8:30 or 9. Taking emails, working, doing communication, working, very, very long days. And, they felt like, oh, I can't push back on anybody on this. I just have to say yes. I just have to do it. And we started unpacking this. Well, like, why do you believe that? Why do you think you have to live in this extreme? And he's kind of new to this particular job. And what he explained to me was that he had been in another situation, another job, where it was just a really toxic work culture, where the managers were really punitive, and he felt very powerless. And it was just a very, very traumatic experience in terms of that work experience, that he was there for like 2 years doing that. And what we talked about was that the trauma that was experienced in that past workplace, all the sort of rules and regulations and sort of his choices about, how he'll show up in this new job, is all based on a trauma response. And so one of the things that we just talked about is helping him lean into the fact that this new environment is not the old environment, that he does have a voice. He can push back. He can set boundaries and not be punished for that. But sometimes we write rules for our lives and for boundaries and for replenishment and around vacation and time off. And it's all based in a traumatic experience. And so unfortunately, what happens is we have a lot of bad ideas and bad concepts. So I want you to think about perhaps part of the burnout that you're feeling, the emptiness, the fatigue, may just be a trauma response. It may just be because you haven't processed that in a healthy way. All right, so let's get practical here. One of the things I wanted you to think about is, maybe build a little chart for yourself. Maybe journal this. But I want to give you kind of 4 prompts to think about in terms of your life. And I just call this kind of the doing doodle. And there's 4 parts of it. The first category, maybe the first box that I would want you to think about, is, what do you want to do right now that you're actually doing? Okay, so these would be things that you would want to do and you are currently doing, and these would be positive things for you, because you're aligned there in terms of what you want to do and then what you are actually doing. All right. Now, another box. Let me give you another box. I want you to think about, what do you want to do that you're not doing? Okay, I want you to write down a few things. What are those things that you actually want to be doing, but that you're currently not doing? Okay, so first box is want to do and doing. Second box is want to do and not doing. Third thing I want you to think about is, what don't you want to do that you're currently doing? Okay, so these would be activities. You're like, I don't want to be responding to emails at 9:00 at night, but I'm currently doing that. I don't want to be working on Sundays, but I'm currently doing that. I don't want to attend every single possible school event that my kid might have, but I'm currently doing that. Okay. So identify those things in that third box. And then in the fourth box, what don't you want to do and you're currently not doing? And really, this is, we want to continue with that good habit. So these are really things that you said, I don't want to do that, and I'm currently not doing that. And so let's make sure we keep those things in that box. Okay. It's like, hey, for me, I talk about this all the time. For me, I don't want to stay up late. Okay. And I'm currently not staying up late. That's a good thing, right? I'm in an alignment. But I think a lot of us, when you look at those 4 different boxes or those 4 different prompts, as we think about the doing doodle, a lot of us have probably a lot of items in our don't want to do box that we're actually doing, and probably several things in our want to do box that we're not doing. And so what I would encourage you to do is focus on those and how you might be able to change some of the choices and behaviors and rhythms and relationships to fix some of the things in those 2 boxes. All right. So let's talk about what burnout, just kind of some general thoughts around burnout. So number 1, burnout for sure creates decreased productivity. Okay. You think that you maxing out, you living with no margin, you living with an empty fuel tank, that's going to produce better results. I promise you, it actually in the long run does not. It actually leads to lower productivity, both for you and for anybody else on your team or in your family that is currently burned out. Burnout creates lower engagement. If you're wondering why perhaps you're in a marriage right now and you're trying to engage with your spouse and they just don't want to talk, they're not interested. They get home from work or at the end of the day, and they just seem like they're not interested in you, or they're not interested in talking to you. That may have nothing to do with you and everything to do with the fact that they're burned out and tired. Okay. And so burnout's going to create lower engagement and decreased connection. And then finally, kind of this is somewhat obvious, but it's also going to create just low energy. There's going to be a listlessness to your life. You're not going to have a lot of joy. You're not going to have a lot of passion. You're not going to have a lot of these positive feelings that we want to have towards life, because we're just going to feel tired all the time. Oh my gosh, I've been there. Burnout. One of the things about burnout recovery, when we think about, okay, I want to recover, I want to start, doing some more things for myself. I want to start putting some gas in the tank. One of the things that is very true about burnout, and when I'm coaching clients, I always remind this of this fact, is that burnout recovery isn't instant, but it actually a slow process. You see, some of us think that we can fix our burnout problem by just doing over a long weekend, okay, or a quick trip to Hawaii or the Bahamas or wherever you want to go. Like, I'll just take a week down in the Bahamas and that's going to solve my burnout problem. No, it doesn't. It actually doesn't work that way. It is actually a much longer process where we're sure Bahamas isn't bad. Hawaii is not bad. Taking a vacation isn't bad, but that's only the starting point to recovering from burnout. You need a plan. You need an ongoing plan. It is recovery. And it just, unfortunately, you can't just instantly solve burnout. You got to have patience. You got to give it time. You got to be consistent with your practices and rhythms of replenishment. That's how you get to a non-burnout state. But remember, it is a slow process. And one of the things that we also have to remember in terms of burnout is that fundamentally, like when we're burned out, when we get to that place where we're just like, we're crispy, we're fried, I can't do this anymore, I just want to lay in bed, I give up, whatever those thoughts of burnout that go through our head and those reactions to life when we're burned out. The process of burnout actually requires us to disconnect from our inherent values. That's basically what's happened here. You have to value and respect yourself. You have to prioritize things in a way that help you be sustainable, help you be strategic. And in many ways, we just lived out of control. We've disconnected from our priorities and our values, and we've kind of really lost our way if we're in the state of burnout. And so I want to encourage you, get reconnected to your values. It isn't just about survival. Life is not just this act of figuring out how to get to the next day or survive this season or just have enough energy to get through the week. We want to thrive here. I mean, that's why I do what I do. I want to thrive in my life. I want to help others, have the best life that they could possibly have. And the only way to do that is to get reconnected to our priorities, our values, to not abandon ourselves, to not allow other people sort of dictate what's important or not important. And so getting back to your values is key. Part of this whole thing called being a human being and understanding ourselves better and understanding our roots and understanding our primal question and understand why we do what we do. Probably the most mature, healthy adult thing that we can do as people is to recognize that we have limits and to just own that. To own the fact that there's only so much we can do. And I know that's like a very unpopular idea within our society. I know that doesn't make for a great Instagram post or a motivational poster. You have limits. Nobody's going to see that. Nobody's going to put that on their wall of their office or in their home. You have limits. But you know what? It's true. And you do. And the part about being a healthy, mature adult is recognizing what those limits are, embracing them, and building a life and other resources to address those limits. But another part that is just as important as recognizing your limits is recognizing your inherent value. See, some of you have just completely forgotten about your value. You've been caught in your scramble. You've been people pleasing. You've been trying to earn your keep. You're trying to be successful. You're trying to get people to pay attention to you or notice you as some stamp of approval. I get it. I understand that. But you've forgotten your inherent value. And so the more that you can live into your value, and that you deserve respect, that you deserve love, that you deserve rest. That's what healthy adult living looks like. So recognizing your limits and then also recognizing your value. In closing, just a couple thoughts. You want to avoid burnout? You got to choose your priorities. You got to choose what's important. Okay. You want to avoid burnout, you got to choose yourself. And that's not selfish. I always say self-care is not selfish. Self-care is strategic. If you want to not burn out, you got to use your voice. Some of you have been way too quiet about your needs. Part of the whole Primal Question model is about us understanding our deepest needs, giving it language so we can then use our voice to communicate that need and ask for people to help us meet those needs. And then finally, just if you're burned out right now, let's implement some boundaries. Let's get serious about having boundaries in our life. It's one of the hardest things to do, but it's one of the best things to do if you truly want to flourish. If you truly want the most out of life, it means setting boundaries, being clear on those boundaries, being consistent with those boundaries. Friends, I hope this was helpful to you today. I hope this is something that you think about and take to heart. Have a check-in with yourself, see what level of burnout that you're at right now, and let's start doing something about it. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Primal Question podcast. I hope you've learned something new about your primal question, or maybe the primal question of someone you know. If you think this episode would be helpful to a friend, I encourage you, please share it. Let people know about the podcast and how it's impacted you by sending a link to a friend. If you're ready to take the next step in your own self-discovery journey, I invite you to visit primalquestion.com/podcast. That's primalquestion.com/podcast for additional free resources and to explore the opportunity to work one-on-one with a Primal Question coach. Also, for those of you who feel a calling to guide others on their journey, there's information available about how you can become a certified Primal Question coach yourself. It's a powerful way to transform lives, including your own.